All right. I have been looking forward to this interview the entire show. I am welcome. I can't get it out. I am joined by Daniel McAdams. He's executive director for the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Daniel, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Hey Jamarl, how are you? It's good to be on. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh man, always appreciate having you. I brought you on because I read this article that you wrote right here, and I think it's a big deal. It's named Diego Garcia Smells Like War. And in the article, you point out that the United States has been pulling a huge amount of military power into this particular area. So a significant amount of U.S. military power has been moved to this past week, including B-2 strategic bombers, which have landed on the U.S. military base in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, just over 2,000 miles southeast of Iran. And your point is that it seems like Trump is having a military buildup with the idea of having a war, or at the very least, no, it'll be a war. I mean, the idea that the US will bomb Iran and Iran wouldn't respond is nonsense. That building a huge amount of military power, larger than we've seen, I don't want to say ever, if I remember correctly, but for a very long time, targeting and aimed at Iran. And this is going in line with Donald Trump giving them 2 months in order to negotiate with me or else. Um, Iran is not a threat to the United States. And yet, we have all of this force for an unprovoked attack on Iran. This is pretty outrageous. Give me your take on this. What do you think is going on with this? Do you think this is a bluff? Do you think Donald Trump is serious with the ultimatum? Give me your thoughts. And more importantly, why do you think Trump is doing this?
Well, that's the $1 million question. Is it a bluff or not? And that's always the question with Trump. He comes out, and I mentioned it in the article. He comes out very bellicose. He makes all kinds of wild threats. And then 24 hours later, he says something completely different. You remember last weekend, I think it was, when he came out and said, I'm PO'd at Putin. I've had it. I'm fed up. And then less than 24 hours later, he completely said, we've got a great relationship and we're going to talk on the phone. So it's really hard to get a handle on what he's doing. But what we do know is that there's at least five B-2 bombers there. There are plenty of the refueling jets. You've got the C-17s there that are bringing lots of equipment within striking range of Diego Garcia. And we know that Trump said if Iran does not negotiate, if we do not reach a deal, very, very bad things are going to happen to them. So that obviously sounds like a threat. So I think it should be viewed as a threat. The problem is if he's doing one of his bluffs, um, there are real world consequences in the world of foreign affairs. I mean, this isn't New York real estate where you probably try to bluff your way into a good deal or something like this. This is the real world. And if Iran senses that an attack is imminent, it will respond, or it may respond. It may not respond, but they will have no way of knowing because these bluffs are being thrown out left and right. So it creates a very uncertain situation, which may be good in real estate, but it's terrible when guns and planes are facing each other.
What do you think the consequences will be for an attack on Iran if Trump? I mean, the problem with bluffs is if you don't go through with it, you lose all legitimacy. And so the very act that it's aired and it's out into the public saying, I am threatening you for a negotiation and I will attack you if you don't do that. And then you put all of this military armaments in striking distance of the country itself. Um, what is the consequences of an attack on Iran?
Well, I think first of all, I think they're creating a trap for him. I think Trump's advisors, and it's not that I'm exonerating him. He's part of this too, but this is what they did to George W. Bush. They laid a trap that he was stuck in, and he had to act. He had to attack Iraq because the neocons are always great at building these narratives, and they've built the narrative now, and they've sprung a trap for Trump. And you're absolutely right. He will look like a weak person if he's given these tough bluffs and he backs down. And that's the one thing he doesn't like. He hates weak people. So this is the standard operating procedure for the neocons. Um, Senator Tom Cotton was in the Senate a couple of days ago, and he sounded exactly like I remember it from '02 and '03 when the neocons said, "This is going to be a cakewalk. Everyone is complaining that it's going to be such a hard war. It'll be over in a couple of days, and by the way, it will all pay for itself in the oil." all a complete pack of lies. They're packing on the lies again, and nobody's pushing back. It's like we've learned nothing. So as to your question, what will happen if the U.S. attacks Iran? Well, the Russians have already come out very, very strongly, and they said this will be catastrophic. Um, what will be the Russian response? They do have a treaty of sorts. It's not a mutual defense treaty, but it has
Yes.
components of it. As Larry Johnson, former CIA analyst, I think wrote about. Was it him? I think wrote about. Yes, it was him. Yes, wrote about if you really look at the agreement that they had, there's certainly something in there, but it will obviously be devastating for the region. The U.S. economy is already reeling. So if we get into a major war in a country of almost 90 million people, it will be an absolute disaster. It'll make the Iraq debacle look like a walk in the park, a cakewalk. It make it look
Yeah.
like a cakewalk.
I mean, Iran is what, 3 times the size of Iraq? And as you pointed out, 90 million people, technologically advanced, especially in regards to missile technology, drone technology. This is like the idea that they wouldn't respond just seems outlandish. And Iran has said, if you attack us, we will get nukes. That was the other thing, right? Like, for one, Israel has nuclear weapons. So it's a bit rich that we're making this argument that Iran can't have a nuclear program. Two, they will hit the quiz, as they call it, quisling governments, meaning they will decimate the oil fields that are effectively in East Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., with the idea of as their response, not to mention hitting Israel, or for that matter, shutting the Strait of Hormuz, meaning the world's energy markets will be toast in a way that we have not seen in our lifetime. It is astonishing to me that Donald Trump will even be willing to broach this sort of outcome or reality. Like this would end his presidency.
There are also about 50,000 U.S. troops within range if he does
That,
attack. So those 50,000 U.S. American troops is almost the number of Americans killed in all of Vietnam will have targets on their backs. And the neocons don't care about soldiers. They think they're just a bunch of dumb brutes, who have it coming. They hate the military. Um, but Trump shouldn't, and he says that he doesn't. But he'll put a target on their backs. You're going to have massive U.S. losses. The only way, I'm not a military expert. It seems to me the only way you could mitigate this would be by the U.S. going in with a nuclear weapon and taking out every one of Iran's capabilities. And it's hard to fathom the United States government using a nuclear weapon again.
by the way, that's been broached by military people saying that they would have these quote unquote tactical nukes that they would use in order to destroy Iran's all of their capabilities. Now, I am highly skeptical of this. Um, but what is your take on that? I mean, like you said, it's hard to fathom that. I mean, because this would be an unprovoked nuclear attack on a country that is not threatening us in the least.
Yeah, we would become the outlaws, worst outlaws of the world than we already are. I mean, we've aligned ourselves with genocidal Israel, and that's the reason that the U.S. is even thinking this. There was an article that came out a few days ago. Well, basically, it was an unnamed Israeli source saying that Israel views the Trump presidency as the best opportunity it has had and may ever have again to finally take out Iran. That's what they want, and they view Trump as the tool that they can use to do it. So that's the real danger. That's why, with Trump aligning himself so closely with the foreign country, a foreign state of Israel, that's where the danger lies because the Israelis are going to work with the U.S. neocons, pushing and pushing and pushing until Trump is in such a trap that he can't do anything but attack.
But I don't, you got to explain this to me. Donald Trump only has, what, 3 years left in his term, 3.5 years, give or take. He can't run for office again. He is 80 something years old, meaning he's going to be dead soon, one way or the other. What are the entanglements? Like, what is the hooks that they have in him to get him to behave this way? I've heard Donald Trump in an interview where he was talking about Netanyahu, and he was effectively saying Netanyahu doesn't want to deal. Whereas he talked to Abbas, Abbas wants a deal. He said he came across like a grandfather, meaning in an honest moment, 3 a.m. between him and his God, he knows the reality of events on the ground in regards to who actually wants settlement versus who doesn't. And yet he's this flaming Zionist when he gets into office that runs an Israeli first presidency. From your point of view, what are the hooks that are in him in order to provoke this? I mean, even the people that he hired for the job, these people are lunatics. Like some of these people are waiting for Jesus to return after they build on, what is it, the Rock of Zion or whatever. What do you think the hooks are that they have in him on this?
Well, it's just not just the hooks in him is the problem. I mean, it's a hooks in almost every single member of the U.S. House and the Senate. The Senate took a vote yesterday on the day where Israel bombed a school where children were hiding, trying to get some peace. They bombed the school. If anyone has seen that footage, it is absolutely horrific. On that same day, the Senate took a vote. Bernie Sanders, Jewish member of the Senate, had the courage to introduce a bill to suspend arms sales to Israel in the face of the genocide. Every single Republican senator voted against it, i.e., voted to continue sending weapons to slaughter more school children like this. It's not
Yeah.
just the presidency that's captured, it's our entire legislative branch as well. It's a real problem, but Americans are waking up to it now. And it's which is a good thing, I think, but it may be too late.
I wish I could show the footage. I can't show the footage. It is too grisly. I mean, you have
Yeah.
people who are like literally dragging burned children out of the
Children
rubble.
are not Hamas. They're not Hamas.
In
The
their
U.S.
minds, there's no difference. And you're absolutely right. It's completely disgusting. I'm curious on where do you think this goes? I mean, so Axios came out with an article. Iran's response is effectively, we are not negotiating with you under threat. Full stop. Two, we don't trust you. So why would we negotiate with you when we don't trust you? C, you blew off the JCPOA the first time around, a deal that we stuck with a year after you blew it off and wasn't necessarily living up to it. However, we will negotiate through a third party actor. Now, I was talking to Miranda the other day. Miranda was like, well, we've always negotiated with the US and third parties. That's not any different than anything else.
Yeah.
But Trump has come out and saying, okay, well, we're looking at this proposal of negotiating to a third party. Maybe this is the off ramp that he's looking for in order to say, okay, well, really, I got something out of this as a face saving mechanism for some kind of back channel negotiations. I am very skeptical, though, of what Iran would even give in any kind of negotiations, considering Trump blew off the JCPOA the first time around. Do you think there's a deal to be made here?
Well, that's the problem. The U.S. has lost all credibility. That deal was painstakingly discussed and put together. It was approved by Congress. It's hard to imagine these days that something like that could even be approved. It was negotiated down to the finest details, and it was working. It was working very well. And Trump comes in and does his bluff and bluster and rips it up. So why the hell would Iran go back to the table? I mean, would you make it if some guy sold you a car and you got home and it was a piece of junk? Would you go back to the guy again? There's no credibility there, and the same is true on the front with Russia. I mean, we had Minsk one and Minsk two, and now Trump is saying, well, there needs to be a universal ceasefire, and we'll do a couple of other things. There's no credibility left in the U.S. It's no diplomacy. So that's the problem. They've undermined themselves, and they've let themselves nothing on the table except capitulation or war. And that's, of course, that's just what the neocons want because they know it won't be capitulation.
Yeah. But see, this is both parties. I mean, like, Joe Biden wasn't any better. I mean, in fact, Joe Biden was even worse because any notion of negotiation, any notion of coming to terms, any notion of acknowledgement that they were losing the war, all of that was off the table. And you get Kamala Harris, who's out here now saying, I told you so. And it's like, you told us what? You were going to start a third world war. Like, what do you think it is about the US? Do you think it's just power has gotten to the point where it's gotten to the people's heads where they think we're above honesty, we're above ethics, we're above morality, we're above honest negotiation? Like, something has fundamentally changed. I mean, it's not like Joe Biden was going to honor any agreements that he made any more than Trump would honor any agreements that he made. I just don't know what's like, do they believe that credibility no longer matters?
Yeah. Well, the right wing in the U.S. loves to talk about how Trump is defeating the deep state, and and they're so happy that there's finally a president defeating the deep state. The deep state's still in charge. The Biden wasn't even president; it was his advisors that were acting as president. And the more we learn about it, the more we understand that there was a cabal of neocons behind him who were literally running everything on foreign policy. The same is true with Trump. I mean, Trump has a cabal of neocons, a lot of them tied back to George W. Bush, and and all these guys. In fact, there was this firing of a few people from the NSC staff. One of them was literally Doug Feith's son, the son of Doug Feith, one of the architects of the Iraq War. His son was in there. So there you go. It's a generational thing. So the deep state is still in charge. They flatter Trump and they make him think that he has some power, but he doesn't. They run things, and so we're in a weird place right now as a country. It's a very schizophrenic time. There's so much gaslighting and there's so much purposeful misinformation and disinformation, and the government and the deep state are actually producing it, and they're convincing the right wingers that it's somehow being defeated. The swamp's being drained. Are you kidding? That's not happening
Yeah.
at all.
What do you make of this?
I think you've frozen up. Jamal, I think the deep state got you.
Daniel, I'm sorry. We lost power. There was
Oh,
the lights and everything else just went off. We lost internet power and everything else. But it is back on. I apologize for that.
I thought the deep state got you.
No, no, I know, right? No, all of the power just went off in the
That's
part.
crazy.
What do you make of this? This article came out, I believe this was NBC News initially reported this, but Trump team advises against calling Putin until Russia agrees to a ceasefire, NBC News reports. Now, this is after Trump's envoy, or let's say Putin's envoy, comes into the country, has a conversation. I don't think they talk about sanction relief. They did talk about opening flights, opening, let's say, U.S. money coming into Russia and businesses to replace European businesses, effectively trying to normalize relationships. And then you get this article coming out the very next day, effectively saying, yeah, by the way, Trump's team doesn't believe he should have a conversation with Putin until they have a ceasefire. Now, this goes back to what we were saying before, this notion of credibility. You have none. And so you're dealing with Russia that doesn't believe anything that's coming out of your mouth. And so you're calling for, we should have a general ceasefire. And as Russia will point out, the Minsk one and Minsk two agreements were effectively blown off. Not just blown off. Angela Merkel said they were built under the understanding they were a lie. And so Putin has been very clear. If you say that you would stop the weapons, stop the intelligence, stop arming Ukraine, then maybe we can have a conversation about a ceasefire. But the notion that we're going to have a ceasefire while we're winning on the battlefield, we are destroying the Ukrainian military, something that we were supposed to be doing. That's our objective was to. Then why would we do that? Why would it be in our interests? So this notion of, okay, no phone call until you get a ceasefire seems to be a nonsense non-starter on its face. And yet the people around Trump are effectively telling him that.
It's like it's the fourth quarter and you're leading 49-0, and the other team says, "Hey guys, why don't we just call it a tie?" I mean, are you kidding? I mean, I mean, I may not be the smartest, person in town, but even to me, when I look at that, it seems like the most insane thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they believe their BS. I mean, we had Cavioli um, before the House, or I think it was the House yesterday, saying the most outrageously stupid things, contradictory. On the one hand, Russia's lost almost 1 million people. On the other hand, they're stronger than they've ever been. On the one hand, they're taking massive military losses. On the other hand, they're outproducing us by a factor of whatever. Which is it? So that's the problem. But what's interesting about this NBC article is someone's leaking, and I wonder who it is. They're trying to trap Trump. Because is it Waltz? I mean, Waltz was involved in this signal business. That was not an accident.
Mhm.
His number got sucked into my phone. Really? Okay, Boomer. You know, um, I mean, something is going on, and there are a group of people who do not want Trump to make peace with Kellogg. How far
Yeah.
are they willing to go? Who knows? Look what happened to Fico in Slovakia. I mean, these people are ruthless, ruthless people. And so someone is leaking in a way to wrong foot Trump in his efforts to make peace with Russia. And I don't know if he'll ever be able to suss him out, because who knows? It's a pit of vipers. I'm sure it is a pit of vipers around him.
Why do you think Trump just doesn't say, you know what? I'm done. I'm calling it a day. I'm not giving you weapons. I'm not giving you intelligence. I'm done. Like he has that option. And part of me thinks that the new mineral deal that he's worked with Zelensky, where he's effectively said, all right, we're going to take pretty much everything that you guys have in Ukraine in perpetuity until you pay us back $300 billion plus 4% interest. And we would have controlling interest over oil, gas, um, anything that comes out of the ground. I mean, like that deal is rape. Like, I don't know another way to call it. It's almost like he's colonizing Ukraine. They can't accept that deal. And yet, that's the deal that he's presented to Zelensky, almost as punishment for Zelensky not accepting the first deal. I guess my thought was, is this a pretext for him to walk?
Well, that would be nice if it were. I mean, the problem is he got himself into this in the first place. There were plenty of people, myself, probably you included, who were thinking this is your chance. Just, walk, like you said, walk away. This was Biden's war. I'm not Biden.
Yep.
There's a new sheriff in town. I'm not going to play this game. It's simple. You're the winner. You walk away with a victory. But again, you got talking about getting
You didn't
sucked
do
in.
it.
He got sucked into this because his pride, his ego. I'm gonna be the deal maker. I'll solve it in 24 hours. And it's a shame. It's a real shame. What he needs to do is call some different people as advisors. You can keep the neocons, but you need some real tough pipe hitting guys who can go toe to toe with them. And until he does that, I was careful about that. Until he does that, there's no chance.
Now, see, do you see Witkoff is one of those guys? Because Witkoff is fascinating to me. He went and got somebody who was completely out of the political space as one of his lead negotiators to have those conversations. Witkoff seems like he's no nonsense, very straightforward. I mean, I don't know the guy, so I'm saying this purely just from a distance. But I do think it's wild to me that he didn't go for any political person. He went for somebody who's like in real estate.
To keep with my movie reference, he's like the wolf. He's like Winston Wolf. He rolls into town and fixes stuff,
Yeah.
and he talks to people. It was supposed to be Kellogg, who's a big dope. And then Witkoff rolls in and starts making some deals. And I think that's what happened yesterday. I think you referenced it earlier. They had this meeting in the White House. They're talking brass tacks. Here's what we need to do. Uh, you know, and that's the kind of that he can get that deal done. And that's what it seems like to me. I don't know him either, but he seems like someone who's unencumbered by these,
Mhm.
political obsessions. So this could be refreshing.
Yeah. Daniel, I loved your article. I love your passion in this. I think you're absolutely right in your take on this stuff. I wish more people in Washington had that take and that point of view. They don't seem to. And people elected Trump with this idea that he was going to be the peacemaker. Judge me by the wars that I end, not the wars that I start. That was what Trump said when he got in office. And all of a sudden, he has opened up hell on Yemen. He's ignored flagrantly the violations to the ceasefire agreement for Israel. He has gone after Iran at this point, meaning I'm gearing up for a war. This is what we got. Daniel McAdams, Executive Director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Daniel, what can people find you, by the way?
RonPaulInstitute.org. We have a daily show, the Ron Paul Liberty Report, which is live at noon Eastern Time on Rumble.
Shout out to you, man. Thank you for this. You're doing God's work. You have a good one.
You too, Jerome. Take care.
Bye bye.